What is up, guys? J'espère que vous allez bien, que vous êtes en pleine forme. Bienvenue sur le podcast Conversation Awesome avec qu'inspirante. A place where we speak Franglish, say the word awesome a lot, mais surtout un endroit d'inspiration et d'éducation pour vous aider à optimiser votre santé globale from the inside out. Mon nom est Claudia, fondatrice de qu'inspirante, et ma mission avec ce podcast est de t'amener dans un monde de développement personnel, d'optimisation d'habitudes de vie et de découverte so you can unleash your potential and live the life you truly want and deserve. Merci d'être à l'écoute. You're awesome. Welcome back to the show. J'espère que vous allez bien, que vous êtes en pleine forme et surtout que vous êtes prête à écouter une conversation awesome super inspirante. Je vais garder l'introduction très courte parce que j'ai surtout hâte de vous présenter mon invité d'aujourd'hui et de vous amener avec nous dans la conversation awesome qu'on a eue. Donc, je vous présente Sylvie. Sylvie qui est quelqu'un que ça fait pas si longtemps que je connais. But you know a soul sister when you see a soul sister. Donc, dès que je l'ai rencontrée, j'ai tout de suite été attirée par son énergie. Et plus j'en apprends sur son histoire personnelle et la façon qu'elle aide les femmes de nos jours, bien évidemment, plus ça m'inspirait, plus ça me parlait. Et j'avais envie de partager some of her magic à vous aujourd'hui à travers le podcast. Donc, dans la conversation qu'on a eue, on a jasé d'énergie féminine versus masculine, le rôle et la place de la femme dans une société patriarcale et qu'est-ce que ça occasionne comme guérison qu'on a besoin de faire, comme unlearning, comme reprogramming. Sylvie nous partage son histoire personnelle aussi qui est absolument fascinante. C'est certain que vous allez vous reconnaître dans au moins une facette de sa vie. On a jasé de spiritualité, de reconnecter avec notre wild side, notre wild women, de devenir cette guerrière sacrée-là. Donc vraiment, là, une conversation that is close to my heart. Vous allez voir, on le dit plusieurs fois dans la conversation, on aurait pu continuer à jaser pendant des heures et des heures. Il y a plein de sujets aussi qu'on a abordés à la surface, qu'on aurait pu plonger encore plus en profondeur. Donc, évidemment, guys, let us know. Send us your feedback. Une fois que l'épisode va être terminé, envoyez-nous vos questions, les sujets que vous aimez qu'on aborde en profondeur parce qu'on va certainement faire un part 2. Et sur ce, je vous laisse à notre conversation. The conversation is in English. Bonne écoute. Welcome, Sylvie, to this awesome conversation. Thank you for being here.
Oh my God. Thank you for having me. This is amazing. I'm super humbled by this.
Yeah, of course. I'm super excited about this conversation. We were talking, before we hit record that there's just so many things to talk about. So we will try to, put it into a 45 minutes-ish conversation, but full disclosure, we might go a little longer because this topic is amazing. And you have an amazing story, which I'm excited for you to share with our audience today. So maybe we could start with that. Who are you? What brought you into this wide woman, personal development, working on yourself, spirituality? Because you definitely did not do that your whole life. So I'd be curious to find out more about what brought you here and the work you're doing today on yourself and with other women.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Well, it's definitely been a journey. So, what brought me here today was quite literally the unlayering and unfolding and reconnecting to myself through my own healing journey, which really brought me into the understanding that at one time in my life, I was just living extremely out of alignment. And that word's a big word, because it's all about awareness. So, I can tell you a little bit about, who I am in that sense. I'm 41 years old. I'm a mother of 2. I have a wonderful, supportive husband. My 2 little girls are, now going to be 12 and 10. I always say that I've lived many lives just in this life alone.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to that.
Right. And of course, I do have a spiritual connection that has also brought me into the understanding that, for me in my experience, I come here with a lot of past lives in its totality anyways. I'm an old soul in that way. I grew up in the Montreal and South Shore area. I grew up in a part Francophone and part Sicilian family. My mother comes from Sicily, quite frankly. She came here when she was very little, 3 or 4 years old. I had a very deep connection with my grandparents. They raised me pretty much while my parents were working. And, parents, as they always do the best they can with what they know, what they have. So
absolutely.
So, I grew up like that. And, I've always been what I like to call, whether that was a very active child, I had big energy and I was just always, dancing and running and, talking. And so I was a lot to handle, so,
right.
In retrospect, understanding that now as a mother and through that spiritual journey, oftentimes when we, are surrounded by children like that or have children like that, it's very hard for a parent who may not necessarily be so grounded themselves to really nurture that within that child, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's where a lot of like those conditionings and the inner child woundings and all those things began. And of course, I'm speaking in the now because I didn't know that then, right? None of us do. Yeah. And so, that just brought me along life and, beautiful memories. Of course, family dynamics were always somewhat difficult. There was, like any other family line, there's issues, there was wounds, some abusive behaviors, things like that, I grew into and the understanding of, and that impacted me deeply. Mm-hmm. So, with all that impacting, of course, I'm developing through this, and there was a calling within me to always sort of be of service. Mm. I didn't know what that was, right? And then, of course, as I move through it, I'm in my early 20s at this point. And of course, growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, I went to Dawson College. I had my party years. I was in the deep of it, the rebel years, all these we like to call the school, the street school, the life experience school, all that stuff, right? It was a very vital part, I believe, of my journey in understanding myself, especially later on. Yeah. In learning very much through contrast, which is what I now believe, my soul really came here to do. That's the way I learn, is really through contrast. Mm-hmm. So I became a police officer, wanted to serve my community. And I felt that call to, be of service in that way and become a police officer. And so I was 25 or 26. I joined the police force, I'm not going to call anything out right now. But anyway, I joined a police force and, doing pretty much what I really had my heart set on doing. And
helping people.
It was straight up. I'm doing this because I want to make the world a better place. I want to help people. Mm-hmm. And again, mid-20s, not really understanding, well, how am I going to do that? It was just like, I'm going to jump into this. It's, a beautiful career. It's going to take me different places. I'm going to get all this different experience and worldview. And And so, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody really truly understands what we sign up for. Until you're in the depth of it. Yep. But I did 16, almost 17 years. Wow. I had, that just in itself was a huge journey. I am thoroughly grateful for everything, every experience, everything that j'ai vécu, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's, again, a very vital part of the journey. It had to happen in that way. Mm-hmm. So, I did everything from, community policing and general duty policing to working at, provincial and federal levels, working internationally. I was very specialized. I became specialized through different various courses within the organization, which brought me really into, the covert side of working in the organization. So lots of, surveillance type duties and undercover type duties. that, also led me to like international deployments, seeing the world in different places. And these deployments were with other Canadian government organizations, and just really, opening and expanding this understanding of who we are and what we are and how the world works in what I now like to call the matrix. But yes. but yes. So, I just really want to say this from the depth of my heart. Like, there's not a single individual or soul that comes into the work, that service work, the first response work, whether that's, military, paramedic, nursing, policing, like those first response type, that don't do it with the utmost heart-centered intention to make the world better, Yeah. So it really speaks to me. So in that process, I think many of us first responders, we don't really, a lot of people are like, well, you became a cop, you should know what you signed up for. It's like, yes and no. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, I'm going to probably experience XYZ. It's another thing to experience XYZ, right? And what that does to your human self and to your core, right? Especially when it's not supported or when it's not nurtured, or if it's expelled or exiled. So, so I think that journey really shaped me, of course. 2015, I was diagnosed with severe compounded PTSD, all of which was related to, my occupation. And I think for me, that was when, and it was right around a time where I had young children. So I had to become a mother, and so that for me was like a major rite of passage, which as a woman was not nurtured. There was a lot of disconnect that surrounded motherhood, already because I was in my wounding and I didn't understand, like I just didn't have that awareness. Yeah. And so in comes diagnosis, which was just like, here's your certificate.
Here's your label. And
Yeah. And I think for me, that was just like, okay, wow, I'm actually not crazy, So I think for me, that's sort of where my real spiritual journey started, was, out of the birth process of PTSD. But where I have to say that it unconsciously started was really when I became a mother. Yeah. So, and please stop me if I'm talking too much. I'm just trying to get.
I love this. Yeah.
Oh gosh. So when I became a mother, it was crazy because I unconsciously had all these, traumas and wounds that I was carrying already. Okay. And I always say I was consciously unconscious. So I knew that I wasn't right, but I still pushed through it.
Yeah. I think a lot of women can relate to that. There's a little something that's not totally right, but because there's children and things to do and your job and you're so programmed by quote unquote the matrix, you just keep pushing through.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so, you just keep pushing through and, everything had to happen the way it happened. So, I had my first daughter, I was in emergency labor. It was just a chaotic process. She, basically, I had this whole picture of how I was going to deliver the baby and all this kind of stuff. And then it just did not happen like that. Again, emergency C-section, she almost died, this whole, so if you can just imagine, you're coming in with this trauma and wounding, you're pushing it, you're exiling it. Now you're creating life and you're bringing life into this world. And you're just quite literally trusting everything outside yourself to make sure that this life comes into the world according to the way you tell me it needs to. Okay. So basically, all these things are happening. Mom doesn't even have 2 seconds to understand what's happening because it's like one of those anatomy scenes where it's like, you know, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like nobody's telling you anything. Anyway, so, you know, first experience with my daughter, my child and all this. And then from there, you know, that's okay. Pushed it aside. Became a mom, did the mom thing, did everything I thought I had to do, you know, all this kind of stuff. You know, 2 years later, along comes my second daughter, you know, and I think for me, again, there's another layer. So same situation, because I had an emergency C-section the first time, the doctor doesn't even like that doctor who I was dealing with. Nope, you're going to have a C-section the second time just because. So you trust that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I nearly died on the table this time.
Wow.
So, you know, I went into like a really heavy type 2 heart block. I was in intensive care for a good portion of like the first hours of my daughter's life. And and so it was just compounded and compounded and compounded. So coming out of all of that, I was diagnosed with postpartum, which was very interesting because it was an easy label to give a new mother, right? Without even understanding her past.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the first thing they do? Well, you have postpartum depression. Okay. You're going to take Wellbutrin and you're going to be fine.
Yeah. Take some pills.
Yeah. Okay. Right. You don't know. And that to me is where I feel like the holistic journey started for me. And then of course, fast forward, because this was back in like 2011, 2012. And then I got my official diagnosis in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically I went through years of, again, getting what I like to call an individual PhD on how my body works. You know, because nobody else is going to tell me how my body works. Okay. Yeah. You're going to give me insight on how a body works. But we are so unique and so individual. And we come with such diversity, physically, energetically, psychologically, you know, that there's no cookie cutter approach. So I really started, you know, diving deeper into nutrition, diving deeper into understanding, you know, and it was all through my children, understanding this process and then understanding the disconnect that we have as women or as a society, but then even as women, how we're not properly prepared for birth. We're not given, you know, like truthfully, unless you go with a doula or a midwife, who really take that holistic approach and understand the woman's anatomy and prepare your, you know, your entire womb for the birthing process. Like there's so many things that go into it that are conventional side of medicine completely obliterate. Like they don't even touch on that. Right. So it was the understanding of that process. And then, you know, well, shit. If this is happening just with childbirth, what else am I not being told? What else am I being disconnected from? Yeah. Right. So I always give people the example. It's like, you know, when you kind of start that nutrition journey, it's like that first time you walk into a grocery store and you look around you and you're like, holy shit, I can only eat from like 3 aisles. Yep. Because everything else is junk. Yeah. You know, it's not made to nurture. Right. So take that example, but then apply it to like quite literally for me, it was everything. And
everything else. Yeah.
Like, holy shit, spiritual awakening. Like I'm going crazy. Like, you know, it's like, yeah.
I love these memes or like these reels on Instagram. It's like, what do you think a spiritual awakening feels like? And it's like, oh, beautiful light, you know, and angels, what it actually feels like. And the person's going mad for like months.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that's sort of like a little bit of my background there. And I think what happened was when I finally got my diagnosis and I started really diving deep into the understanding of trauma. And keep in mind, I was still a police officer at this time. I was still in it. You know, I was really in it. Yeah. And of course, it's that deep conditioning. All right. I got PTSD. All right. I'm going to cure myself and I'm going to do the work and I'm going to prove that I can still be, you know, A, B, C, D, E, right? With PTSD. Yeah. And like, you know what I mean? You don't take the time. We're not gentle on ourselves because we are taught that we have to quite literally, like we said before, push through everything. We're taught that we have to achieve at everything, that we have to be good at everything. And if you're not, like,
shame on you.
Shame on you. And you don't have a role in society.
Yeah.
You know? So once again, disconnect. So I think, you know, for me, it really started opening up probably in about, you know, around 2016, 2017. You know, I went off sick from work. I'm not even gonna, like, I'm fully transparent. I was like, you know, this is really, really out of alignment. Like at that time, it was like, I'm out of alignment. Like I cannot do the type of work I'm doing, be the kind of mother I want to be the kind of partner and spouse to my husband that I want to be. You know, my husband is also a police officer. So there was a big dynamic there, right? Yeah. You know, shift work and traumas and wounding and like this deep, toxic, egotistical, patriarchal kind of conditioning. And remind me, I want to talk about that patriarch thing again. And I really want to take away that stigma of patriarch equates to bad men. That's not what that is. Because our men are suffering too in that system of oppression and control. So, you know, it was like, how do I do all this? Like that was kind of like the suffering. It was like, oh my God, I can't. Like, you know, I got work pulling me, you know, I had talents and skill set and specializations, and you want to achieve and you want to achieve, you know, and you want to prove and you want to prove.
Yeah, you get your external validation from what you achieve.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, of course, being a woman in a, you know, male dominated organization, and in an organization that, you know, in this specific organization, it's no shock or no surprise. I mean, you can just go on your regular fake news and you can basically see the amount of like lawsuits and harassment. And it's like, I mean, it's all there because it's real, you know, and I'm not pointing the blame. I just feel like that, you know, there's a conditioning and a culture that goes in with that organization that, you know, needs to change. And again, I mean, I can touch on that after, but, you know, being in that as a woman, there's even more pressure to say, you know, I can do what you do. I'm just as good as you. You know, I'm going to do it like a man. But see, that's where we suffer. Yeah. Because it's not to do that like a man, it's to do that like a woman. But we're not taught how to be women in a man's world. And men are not taught how to nurture, first of all, themselves. To nurture that feminine aspect. So there's, you know, not only you have the toxic masculine rising in both. Men and women, right? So, you know, moving through all that. So I come off sick. I start to heal. I start the healing journey.
That healing journey.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, for me, you know, it started with, you know, your basic, very vital and important modalities, which are, you know, the fitness, the nutrition, you know,
drink your water, get some sleep, rest, stretch, meditate. Yeah,
exactly. And, you know, again, super important, very vital. I think for me, what was happening, and this happens for a lot of first responders, or just, you know, let's just people in general who, you know, suffer severe trauma, is that it's not until you start addressing the essence of who you are. So doing those like inner child pieces and really understanding the spiritual components of that, like the spirituality, the essence. When I say spiritual, again, this has nothing to do with religious belief. This is not like, you know, not about that. You know, people are like, well, what is spiritual? I'm like, you know what? Trees are spiritual. Go be in the trees and you will find spirituality. Like, it's like, you know. So, I was doing everything, and like, excuse my expression. I always say, like, I literally hoard myself into wellness. So, I don't know if I can swear on this show, but
you can.
I might drop the little F-bomb here and there, but yeah. And I mean, I was doing everything in that regard. I was using all my benefits and my resources, the massage therapy, the naturopathy, the, chiropractic. I mean, everything I could. Right. And, I was feeling better. I was not on any medication at this point. I came off of medication actually quite early. I was only on it for under a year before I felt like a huge zombie. I was not myself. I had a deeper wisdom that I now know what it is. But then it was just, I really needed to listen to that. And it just wasn't for me. Okay. Because it was masking. That's what, it's just another form of disconnect. Right. So I didn't want to stay sick. I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life, trying 50 different medications at different dosages and pretending like everything's okay, because I'm not addressing
the roots. Yes.
Okay. So, and that was then. So like moving forward. So, 2016, 2017, feeling better, going through all these different healing modalities, but still not having the kind of breakthrough, because I went back to work. And I could just have this awareness now where I was like, oh my God, like we are all sick. We are all sick, and hiding in that, because, and again, everybody has such a personal, unique journey. And some people are really just, their journey is not going to lead them, let's say, to, major awakening or major break. That's just what their journey is in this life. And others, it's like, boom, right? So it's to honor that in others. That's the consciousness piece. It's the piece where you have to understand you're not here to fix everybody else, that the only thing you can do is reconnect to yourself, understand yourself. And then through that, you stand grounded, you stand in your truth, you stand in your authenticity. And whatever that does, whatever frequency or energy that puts out and attracts, those are your people.
Yes.
That is your calling. That is your following, right? So that's pretty much how that went. And then when I had my real breakthrough when I was introduced to some alternative healing modalities, which I really want to really put out there and say that, lots of plant medicine and like, whether that was really customized herbal remedies or like, actual plant medicines that really help support the systems, help support the brain, help bring into deep awareness and deep consciousness, a real understanding of who you are, what we are, like as a collective, like all these beautiful insights. And I think for me, that's what sort of broke my heart open. It really like uncalloused and took off a lot of the armor that I was placing on my heart as protective mechanisms.
Yeah.
That was really holding me back from really stepping into my power, really stepping into truth, really being able to express what needed to be expressed. So that's sort of, what did it for me. And then it was just like
expensiveness from
huge. Yeah. So that's what really brought me into the work that I'm doing today, where, I am a healer. And with that piece, I have to say that we can only support others' healing at the depth that we've met our own healing.
Oh, that's so profound. Yes.
And it's, you can't fake that. You can try. Yeah, but you can't fake that. So my I guess, how would you say that? Like my journey, part of it anyway, is to really continue always always continue to expand in my healing, expand in my understanding of self, and how that relates to the collective, and, just expand the heart. And these pieces are infinite. Like the way the universe is quite literally infinite. Pieces we hold inside for those unlayering, like healing never stops.
No, it doesn't.
It's not linear. It's messy. It's all over the place. And it never stops. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of
wow.
And a long but nutshell version of who I am, where I came from, and where I am.
Yeah. I love it. Like I love hearing stories like that because, and there's so many things I could, relate to and go back on, because just you being like, okay, I'm going to start taking care of myself. I'm going to work on my nutrition, work out and all that. But there's always a but if you don't address the mindset and the soul and who you are as a person under the training program and under the healthy recipes. Yes. And that's something I've seen in my work. I've been coaching for 15 years. And at first it was all, here's the perfect training program for you based on this muscle group and your goals. Here's the perfect program for the whole year. You're going to reach your goals. And then obviously there's a nutrition that came about it, because if you train 3 times a week, if you eat crap all week, you're not going to get the results. So like the nutrition, the macros, the chemistry of the nutrition when you eat certain foods, and like the supplements. Yeah. But then I started to realize, okay, I give these women the perfect training plan for them, something that fits with their schedule, something that they actually enjoy doing. I tell them and like educate them all about nutrition. They still don't do it. They still don't keep the consistent habits. Why? Because there's something between our 2 ears, and there's beliefs and programmings and labels that we put on ourselves that are holding us back. So you can't. I was going to say, that's a broad statement, but no, you can't heal yourself and achieve whatever goal that is. We're talking about nutrition and fitness right now, but whether that's in your relationship, whether that's in the work you're doing, if you have a business, in your family, like your hobbies, like you can't fully have a happy, fulfilled life and live in alignment if you're not healing and going in deep and seeing what is holding you back. What are these beliefs? What are those labels? Why do I have to be the overachiever? Why do I have to people please everybody? Why do I have to be a perfectionist? Why do I seek love outside of myself? Why am I pushing through this? So yeah, you're an example of that's very inspiring for a lot of us who are doing the work, are doing the journey, are starting to heal, and it's like you said, it's messy. It doesn't end, thank God, because it's expensive and it's just limitless. And once you tap into your power, that you have the power within yourself to heal and expand, then it's, wow, life gets beautiful. And like, oh, I have control over this. Cool. I could just work on myself and raise my vibration and all the awesomeness comes to me. But it is a journey. It is a journey, just like what we just heard you talk about. Like it's been a ride and it took you years to do that, have that breakthrough and have that awakening. So.
Yeah. And I think, absolutely. I mean, there's so many beautiful pieces here. Like, I definitely want to touch on like the labels and the conditioning and the masks that we wear. Because, we really kind of create these identities within us. Right. Again, another form of disconnect, and I want to get to that in a second, but one thing I have to say, it took probably a good 3 years for me towards the end of, I say, my career, like when I made that decision to say, I can't work here anymore. Right. But it took 3 years of the deep dives into those healing modalities and like the plant medicines and like doing the journeys and the ceremonies and the really, digging into the shadow aspects of myself. And again, side note, when we talk about shadow, I think it gets so misrepresented, especially now, like that, all of this is coming to light and it's coming more mainstream and like, oh, shadow work. Yeah. Like number one, it is probably the most profound type of work that you can do on yourself to really understand and be in awareness of your themes and patterns that thread out through your life, right? So that can quite literally choose something different, right? But when we talk about the shadow, really all we're talking about are the parts of ourselves that we exile, that we're told or that we are taught to exile because at some point in our upbringing, at some point in our life, it wasn't safe to be that. Okay. And so we exile them. And this happens throughout our whole life. Like, it's not just as kids. The child portion sets the foundation for that. Yeah. Right. But then as those themes come back, because that's the soul journey, themes are always going to come back. Even if you think you healed them, that theme is going to come back to you in a completely different way, in a completely different experience. And it's going to call you to level the fuck up. And it's going to call you to attention and say, hey, remember when we dealt with this? Okay, well, it's here again. Yeah.
Here's a deeper layer.
Right. Exactly. It's a deeper layer. So shadow work is beautiful for all of that. And shadow work, especially for women, really lays into the, I say like the depths of our oceans, right? So that's like, a lot of that understanding, like the womb work and the wounding of the collective towards the feminine and like, all of this kind of stuff that we can, get into. But it was incredible to see all of that, like through the shadow work. And then through the shadow work, you then begin to recognize the labels, the conditioning. You recognize the masks that we wear. You recognize quite frankly, the identities that you believe you are, that you are not. So it's a huge piece.
Yeah. To me, I was also recognizing the disbalance between my masculine and my feminine energy. And that goes with the labels, right? Because I've always operated in my masculine energy because that's how I got external validation. That's how I achieved my goals. That's how I was like, a first student, like grade A and all that, and like success in skating and just achieve, set the goal. And Claudia works all the time. She's a workaholic. She's so passionate. Everything that she does, she succeeds in it. So I've always operated in that, and then learning and like feeling the misalignment, the burnout, the overtraining, and just, sorry guys, I'm going to the beach for a month because I can't handle this anymore. But I didn't know at that point that was that, right? Because like you said, you don't know that you're doing shadow work. You don't know that you're having an awakening until you start attracting the people or doing this work. You're learning from them, you're sharing until you have, these ceremonies or reading about it or listening to podcasts like this. Because sometimes you're doing the work, but you don't even know it's the work because you're not aware yet that this is a disbalance or a misalignment or whatever. So
absolutely. The escape mechanism.
Oh yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're escaping our environment or escaping or like we're going to go and relax. Like, no, you're quite literally escaping yourself because you are holding yourself, those shadow aspects, that inner child, you have created a prison for them. Right. And so they are living in this prison. And if you don't address that shit, it will leak. It will seep. Yeah. It will come up in all these different ways. And, they get compounded and compounded and compounded. And that is what builds up to these like burnouts and to this, been there, like, oh my God, like wanting to escape, like just literally like, and I don't mean this in a suicidal aspect. And I thankfully never had planned out suicidal ideologies or anything like that. But I can definitely tell you that in the thick of it, I did not want to be on this planet. Like I did not want to be on this planet. Like, yes, I love my children. Yes, I love my husband. I knew that I had, support and all that, but it's just like, oh man, I couldn't live in myself. The pain was so deep and I just was suffocating. So, anyway, so I guess, I got lucky in that way because, I had to make choices. And this is what I try to tell women all the time, women and men. And it's like, you always have a choice. Yes. There's always a choice. Yes. And oftentimes, we're too afraid to feel because we're not taught how. Mm-hmm. We're not taught how to express or feel, or, we're really not. We're not nurtured in that way.
Yeah.
And then every system that we move throughout our lives doesn't support that either. Mm-hmm. So of course there's fear. There's so much fear. Mm-hmm. And so when we can come to a realization that there's no enemy within, then we understand that there's also no enemy on the outside, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's I can talk like this, but it took years, it took, a solid 3 years of me, during those 3 years, I probably had to say, I had some relapses where, there were relapses, but I was better equipped with tools on how to deal with them. Right. Mm-hmm. So I had a better awareness. Yeah. So it's not to say that you heal and then you're never going to feel depressed again, or you're never going to feel anxious again. No, you're going to have those feelings. Mm-hmm. We are human. We're here to feel that. We're here to suffer. We really are. We're here to feel this formed body that we live in. We're here to feel and understand the formed world, mm-hmm. So there's a piece of suffering in that that is extremely important to our mm-hmm. expansion and our growth.
Yeah. So but it's what you do with those feelings, the messages 100%. That you get from those feelings, and then the choice you make considering you're feeling these feelings. That's important.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so that choice is so important. That choice is it's okay, well, do I jump or do I just stay where I am? Does it feel good where I am? It gets to a point where people are just I just can't be this way anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me, it was I really had, and something I really communicate to everybody is feel it, feel, sit in the shit, mm-hmm. sit in it and feel it and let it come here and scream it or whatever it is you need to do to literally move that energy that's stuck, mm-hmm. everything that's stuck in you, and then it's as it moves through, you get clarity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sitting in it, I think, is the best advice. If you guys take one thing out of this conversation, sitting with your feelings. And a lot of people don't do that because, like you said, there's fears. It's scary. What do I do? What do you mean? I just sit with it. You sit with it. And then if you feel like crying, you cry. And that's it. If you want to journal about it, if you want to scream about it, if you want to talk about it, but we're not learned that in school. Our parents, most of how we're, being raised and stuff, there just wasn't any safe space for us to feel, or we're being told stop crying, stop being a little baby. You have nothing to complain about, your anger is not valid. But no, your feelings are valid. And the more you do the work and you practice, quote unquote, sitting with this, being aware of your emotions going in, the faster, I don't know about you, but for me, the faster they go through. And I'm cool. Why do I feel sad? Let me cry. Got it out. I got my message. I got my downloads. This is why I felt sad. Okay, I can make the choice now to do something about it. And it doesn't stay stuck.
That's
so
right.
You feel free. You feel lighter. You feel more aligned. You're excited to live another day. And you're living in your higher emotions.
Yeah. And see, this is it. It's that that process that you just explained so beautifully. That's spirituality.
Yeah.
Right there. That is spirituality. Mm-hmm. You can see your psychologist, and God, I hope you have a good one. You can see your psychologist or your psychotherapist, but once again, it's they will only be able to meet you where they've met themselves. Right. And this is for any professional or any mm-hmm. healer or any and so you hope that you're going to have somebody who's experienced some form of what you are experiencing mm-hmm. and has made it through, right? So that they can coach you through that mm-hmm. in a way. And again, you're going to take and receive and perceive that coaching piece in the exact way that you need to perceive it at that time. Because you can take that same coaching piece 10 years later and you're going to see it in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So there's no right or wrong per se in that process. But I feel like, again, like psychology, like there's limitations on everything. Like, there's a clinical framework and it's very clinical again. And it's like, listen, I did psychology for 12, 13 years, and I got very blessed with this amazing psychologist who was also a shaman. And I did not know that she was a shaman, quite frankly, until much later on in my journey when I was ready to receive that.
Yes. When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
That's right.
Yes.
And so, she went from psychologist for me to, mentor and just this beautiful soul mother, almost like, who really always saw the light within me and helped me understand that that's what we are, So all this to say is that, yes, there's a billion different healing modalities out there, and bravo to you if you have the courage to make a choice to even start with one.
Yeah.
But it's to keep that openness to the understanding that there is not just one way. And just because your doctor practiced medicine in the way they practiced medicine, and there's a place for that on your journey, it doesn't mean that that is the only way to heal. And the same goes with your naturopathic doctor or your personal trainer or your nutritionist or your massage therapist. It is a spectrum. It is a holistic approach. And that is what healing needs to be. And when we talk about shamanism and we talk about like that, mystical, spiritual, piece that has been so taken from our Western civilization, again, a super important part of healing the energy body, and I think that is what kind of propelled me into, that deeper understanding, the deeper awareness, the fact that I can stand here today and, be sort of like a wise woman or a teacher or facilitator in that regard. It's because that really opened me up to a lot of the medicine that I can now provide and the gifts that I have always had within me, right? That I just wasn't being nurtured by being in that system of oppression and suppression and control, right?
Yeah. So we tame ourselves and we keep those gifts inside of us, and we don't spread the light because we're in so many boxes until we awake and get out of the box and remove the box.
Yes.
Amazing. I love this conversation. Now you work with a lot of women. What are some common limiting beliefs, inner child work, wounds? We did mention some examples, like some personal example for me with like the labels and stuff. What are some common themes that you see and that you help women heal through or go through in their journey?
Okay. Big question. There's a lot. So thank you for that. But so first and foremost, I have to say that I think I don't necessarily, I will teach, support, or facilitate on aspects and experiences that I have lived through myself. So I'm not going to pretend like I know all about XYZ when I haven't experienced that or tapped into that. Okay. And there's different dimensions in learning. It's not just by, let's say, reading something and getting a certification on all that you have read that it means you're all of a sudden this expert. I really, truly believe that it's not until we embody something.
Yeah.
Okay. It's really education is key, but education in all its forms. Embodiment form, especially in my journey, has been so powerful.
Yeah.
That's also how I learn. So I'm not saying that, the other way is not powerful. It could very well be for somebody else. Right. But I think for me, like what ended up happening was, again, it started with that whole awareness piece on, with motherhood and the disconnects through that. And like how women in general are just so disconnected, and living through 16 years of, this sort of like male dominated environment, that control of patriarch. And you know what? Some of the worst experiences that I encountered were not from men. They were from women.
Interesting.
Women who were, again, so deep in that toxic masculine. So again, all that experience brought me to a point where it was like, okay, number one, there's way too much stuff that's hidden from us. Okay. There's too many things out there that like women just don't know. Like, I ask most women, like a lot of women will come to me with, because they're just burnt. They're overwhelmed. They're just in this fog. They are so disconnected from themselves that they just don't even know how to play out the roles in their life that they think they need to play out, right? So that's sort of like where it starts. But then as we dig, we start to understand that, oh my God, I'm ashamed of my body. I have pain during sex. I don't even know what my menstrual cycle is like. I have painful periods. These are all things that and every woman, it's like, I feel shame if I dress up too much because I've been slut shamed, or like, I don't know how to, like one of the biggest ones is abandonment. And the other one is I can't express, like it's stuck in the throat chakra. Like it's just stuck there energetically. Right. So this is all like the pieces of what is brought to my attention when I'm working with different women. And it doesn't matter like what the trauma was. Not that the trauma doesn't matter, but I'm saying like whatever the experience was, the end result, the feeling, the emotion, the disconnect is all the same.
And that's very important for you to mention that, because I feel sometimes women, when they hear like trauma, right? Or like wounding, or like, I need to heal. They're like, well, I didn't get abused when I was a kid. My parents are still together. I had a very nice, mellow childhood, right? But no, like there's a spectrum of like trauma, and it's how you perceived it when you were a kid and how it made you feel, right? Yes. It's not like, oh, well, being sexually abused is quote unquote worse than being told by a teacher that you were never going to be good at math. Both can cause trauma and can cause something for you to heal later in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's bang on. It's like, it's even what we were, experiencing in the police world. Like, I've been to plenty of critical incidents and all these kinds of things. And like, you can be 5 first responders, show up at the scene of a critical incident. Okay. And every single one of those first responders are going to see, feel, and perceive that critical incident completely different. And it's going to imprint on them differently, right? And so, number one, to be super trauma informed is not necessarily to understand what causes trauma, but it's to understand how we like internalize that. Okay. And then how that plays out in our life, right? And so anyway, lots of stuff in that. So yes, trauma is not just limited to, the sexual assaults for women, or, the actual violent, like domestic abuse, or like those violent crimes that we think about. Like trauma is quite frankly, growing up in an environment where, you may have felt love, but it wasn't safe to express yourself sensually. It could have, and sensual, by the way, like we have this conditioned false understanding of what sensuality is versus sexuality. They're both very important, but they're both very different, right? So if we're not taught to ask for pleasure, and pleasure can be the food we eat, pleasure can be, the way we feel if I rub my arm. Pleasure can be like so many different things. But if we're taught that pleasure is bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Like you're not allowed to have pleasure. Like, you shouldn't ask for that. Like good ladies don't ask for, like, or like, you know what I mean? It plays out even in our sexual lives, where we don't even know how to ask for what we want, or we feel shame
is
around.
huge.
Yeah. Because again, like we're living like when it just comes to sexuality, we live in this conditioned world where, we're fed pornography and made to believe that this is the epitome of what, sexual activity should look like.
And we have to please the men and, be a good girl. And
that's what it is. It's all performance and role playing. And I'm not saying that cannot be a fun or pleasurable aspect. But what I am saying is that it is a tiny speck of sand on the beach in relation to the full sacredness and the full embodiment of what sexuality truly is.
Yeah.
So a lot of women, when we talk about sexual traumas, it's not necessarily a rape or sexual abuse, but it's in it's like, oh my God, I've had, X amount of partners and I've never been able to even express myself. And so I experience pain during intercourse and I just allow it to happen because I don't know any better. Like, and we're not taught. We're not taught. So there's so many different things that come my way, I should say. So
I love it.
Yeah.
And if women who are listening right now would like to get in touch with you or maybe, talk about this with you and work with you eventually, what's the best way to get in touch with you? So I can add that to the show notes in the podcast. And
yes, I do have an email address. And I'm really not about, maybe I should get better with this, but it doesn't.
Don't shoot all over yourself. That's a shadow side as well.
No, I'm just saying it doesn't the social media stuff, the pressure of having to, again, perform on, it doesn't resonate with me. Yeah. So I try,
email works.
Email's amazing.
Perfect.
So my email is, a.sacred.warrior.11@gmail.com. The reason why I came up with a sacred warrior was really because I had so much healing to do around the warrior archetype and what that actually meant. And protecting others and the warrior and the fighting for this and fighting for that. And it was like, oh my God, here I am in that toxic masculine again, And so when I really moved through and released the toxic warrior, I started coming into the understanding that, holy fuck, everything is sacred. And the type of warrior that I am is literally, it's quite this, it's a sacred warrior. It's, the work that I do, it's when you come to me, what I want to teach you or support you or guide you to understand is the reconnecting and remembering of all of those sacred parts of you. And once you can understand the sacredness that lives within, then you start understanding the sacredness all around you, right?
Yeah.
So
I like that, sacred warrior. Nice. So I'll put that in the show notes. We're definitely going to have to do a part 2 because this has been amazing. Yes! So many things to deep dive into. So ladies, if you're listening and there's anything that we mentioned today that you want us to chat about more in depth for the next, for part 2 of this conversation, let us know, send us an email and we'll definitely chat more about all these amazing things. I want to thank you and acknowledge you for sharing your story with such transparency and courage and inspiration. So thank you for sharing that and being your authentic, awesome, wild, sacred self. Very inspiring for me. And I'm sure it's going to be for all the women who are listening to us today. Really, really appreciate it.
And thank you for, reaching out to me and allowing me the opportunity to quite literally come out of the closet here. That's what I'm doing. I'm I've never done this before, putting me a little bit out of my comfort zone and really talking loud here.
Yeah, I love it because, and that's, I love talking about nutrition, training, but like we said, in this conversation, these types of conversations need to happen a little more often. More people need to hear this. So if I can use my podcast, especially in 2022, to have these types of conversations and really help women go in and heal from the inside out, to step into their true higher self, then awesome. So thank you for putting yourself out there and coming out of the closet. Really appreciate it. And I finish every awesome conversation with the same question for all of my guests. So I'm curious to hear your answer. What is your favorite quote and why?
I love that you just asked me this. So I have a lot, but what I did recently was I sort of made my own quote. So I pieced together so many beautiful things that I've heard and absorbed. And I made this quote. And actually, I'm going to read it to you.
Yes.
It's a bit of a longer quote, but I have it here. It's actually funny that I have it here because I didn't know you were going to ask me that question. So here you go. I read this to you. So release attachment to suffering and love what is. Love what is the dark and the light in order to remember the innocence of your heart so it may step forward as your only master. And then I say, go sacred one, go rewild yourself.
Yes. Wow. I just got goosebumps all over. Thank you for sharing that beautiful quote. I love it. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Sylvie. We'll chat on the part 2 of this conversation. Oh my God,
I'd be honored. Yeah, we'll dive deep into those little topics. So yes.
We will. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
J'espère que cette conversation awesome t'a inspiré. Et d'ailleurs, I would love to hear back from you. Rejoins Karmakin sur les réseaux sociaux and tag me in a post pour partager ce que tu retiens de cet épisode. Je serais vraiment grateful aussi si tu pouvais me laisser un rating and review pour le podcast. Ça me permet d'avoir un impact positif sur plus de gens comme toi. Merci beaucoup d'avoir été à l'écoute and until next time, je te souhaite une journée awesome.